Hello there, I'm Leo Waldock for Kit Guru, and this laptop here is the Asus Republic of Gamers G751. In the UK, for some reason, we have a J suffix to that, so G751J. Goodness knows what the J means, but there we have it. But the important thing is the Republic of Gamers, because basically I cannot think for the life of me the last time I saw a Republic of Gamers product that wasn't wow. There's always a wow thing about them. And we've got the standard Republic of Gamers red and black color scheme going on. And then we've got something very non-standard with this laptop, which is these sorts of exhaust vents at the back and this curious sort of hinge thing that's going on. If I just turn it slightly to the side, when I do that, you can see that the chassis comes quite a significant way behind the screen and it hinges absolutely beautifully. And then here, it sort of, can't really describe it, it sort of swoops. It's a strange thing that's quite lovely. You wouldn't think, would you, a laptop hinge could get a bloke going like that. So there we go, a laptop with a good hinge. Now then, the basics of the spec. It's got an Intel Core i7-47, oh, popped open the DVD drive, 4710HQ processor, which is 2.5 gigahertz that turbos. I'm seeing a bit of a theme going on with laptops recently, which is this Republic of Gamers Core i7-4710HQ, so 2.5 gigahertz up to 3.5 gigahertz. The Acer Aspire V15 Nitro we saw recently, the same processor. The CyberPower Fangbook that we saw a little while ago, Core i7-4870HQ, 2.5 gigahertz to 3.7 gigahertz. Basically, that Core i7 with the HQ suffix, regardless of the exact speed, varies slightly, but that's the processor to go for in a gaming laptop. And similarly, graphics. Nvidia Maxwell is the only game in town. This fella here has got GeForce GTX 970M, 3GB. We've seen on that Acer, we saw the 860M, and the Fangbook was also 970M. If you're paying loads of money, 980, and if you've got that huge great Asus MSI, do apologise, Titan, you've got SLI going on. So GTX 970M, Core i7, you're there, aren't you? Presumably in no short order we're going to see the 5 series Core i7 coming along, but right now this is the processor of choice. Other bits and pieces, we've got a SanDisk SSD, 128GB, and we've also got a hard drive in there with a bunch of storage. Let's just remind myself, it's a terabyte. Surprising actually, I'd have thought a hard drive would be bigger these days. But there we go, but that's an awful lot of games. You've also got Intel Wi-Fi 8211AC. Obviously AC is the go-to Wi-Fi these days. The N is a bit passé. The only slight surprise for me is that the gigabit Ethernet on this laptop is Realtek rather than Intel. Asus often makes a thing about going with Intel. In this instance, they've gone Realtek on the gigabit. If I just turn the laptop, we've got the power jack, we've got VGA, Ethernet, HDMI, mini DisplayPort, a couple of USB 3 and headset jacks. The power jack. Here is the power brick. It's a beefy thing, rated at about 220, 230 watts. Which isn't a massive surprise given the Core i7 and the GTX 970M, but nonetheless, going with my usual rule of thumb, the bigger the power brick, the more the juice, the more grunt for your laptop, sir. And then if I just turn this around, it's quite a large thing. And on this side, we've got a DVD drive, which actually is a Blu-ray drive, a couple of USB 3 and a Kensington lock, and there we have a card reader. We've got nothing along the front, and on the rear we've got the exhaust vents, which are widely separated. Reading ahead, when the system gets hot, the heat comes out of those corners and the rest of the chassis remains completely cool to the touch. It's quite extraordinary actually. So that bulge at the back, they've clearly done something with the ducting to the vents there, and it works extremely well. The screen is full HD, so 1920 by 1080. And there's a bit of a thing going on there with screens, because that's one of the big decisions they have to take with a laptop screen. Do you go for full HD? Do you go for 4K? There is no other choice to make, realistically. This is a 17-inch with full HD, so you could argue that you've got enough real estate to go 4K. I liked the CyberPower FangBook with its 4K display. However, I have to say that it takes a hell of a lot of power to drive a 4K display. Obviously, you've got a colossal number of pixels. The FangBook, it would play certain games at, say, 60 frames per second. That was Thief on average presets. Go up to 4K, 21 frames per second, which is just simply a matter of fact. You're driving so many pixels, the poor thing's going to just suffer flogging itself along. So I think that Asus probably made a wise decision going with a full HD display, because you'll see from the photos on KitGuru's webpage that it looks lovely. It's a good panel, the colours are nice, it's bright without being glaring, there's no horrible reflective coating, it's just well balanced and works. And I think that the matte black colour scheme and the red, it kind of helps that you're not getting any kind of bling and wow. It's just a really effective panel. 4K would have a certain temptation, but you've got to drive the pixels. Realistically, we're playing most games at full HD. So whilst 4K, it's obviously going to come, it's going to be the thing, particularly on a laptop of this size. They've made a reasonable decision going with full HD, in my opinion. The other bit of the specification I haven't mentioned is memory. You've got 16 gigabytes of DDR3. So if I just flip it over, the underside is a bit curious because the laptop rests on these sort of 4 feet. They're widely spaced. I would love to show you inside this laptop, but I haven't actually managed to get inside it properly. Under that little rubber hatch there is a single screw. You pull the screw out, pop off this cover. That reveals some empty memory slots for memory upgrades. It also shows a couple more screws. Go around the outside, remove these rubber bungs, take out a load more screws, and you can give yourself a bit more access. You can see the hard drive and the SSD. They're regular 2.5-inch drives, they go that way. And you can see that the installed memory is in the chassis. The 2 outer slots are just for upgrades. And that's as far as I got, because I'm quite sure that you actually have to remove the keyboard to get access this sort of little, there's a little line there, and you prise the keyboard up. I'm quite sure of this, and you'll be in. I didn't do it because frankly it's too pretty, and I had this horrible feeling I was going to cause damage, which means I can't be clear how easy it is to actually get access to the true guts, which would obviously be the cooling system, but also the battery. The battery's in there somewhere. I've not actually seen it because it's in the laptop. And I was a bit shouty about that Acer, because going inside a laptop to change the battery at some point in the future, I consider to be a bit of a pain in the neck. I was a bit rude about the Acer in that regard, so I'm going to have to say the same with the Asus, which is if you have to go inside it to do what most of us would consider to be a, not routine, but it's a job you're going to have to do at some point, well, there you go. If it's bad for Acer, it must be bad for Asus, mustn't it? It's only fair. So that's the basic spec. I do, by the way, like the Vga output. I'm going to assume that so you can connect up a projector of some sort, because I can't think of another reason why you might have it. Let's just plug in my games controller. Plug it into the correct port, that'd be good, wouldn't it? And let's just click on Far Cry 4. Okay, and as we load this screen, and you'll just see just what the combination of Core i7 and GTX 970M does for you, along with a stack of memory. The slowest part here quite clearly is this horrendous blooming loading thing with Steam and Uplay and such like. And we zoosh through the air, fly, going to Shangri-La. So it's a cutscene, obviously, rather than gameplay. And we get this bit of old nonsense. Apologies, look like a complete idiot. Barely see what the screen's doing. The point is, that it looks absolutely lovely, and the motion is completely fluid and smooth, and that is quite enough of me being appalling. Now, in the course of doing this review, funnily enough, I actually came across the fact that this type of keyboard, which I've always thought of as an island keyboard where the keys poke up through the top deck, is actually called a chiclet keyboard. I had absolutely no idea. Similarly, the mouse buttons are separate mouse buttons. They've actually made a proper job of that, even though most of us, when we're playing games, wouldn't actually use the built-in mouse with the USB mouse or wireless mouse. The keyboard, mouse, touchpad work really well. Totally impressed by that. Similarly, the Wi-Fi is all good stuff. Audio is surprisingly good. And the Republic of Gamers aspects of this laptop are actually very few and far between. We've got some keys at the top which are sort of, you can set up as macro keys, and they've got a couple of functions built in. But other than that, it's almost entirely standard Asus laptop, and it's none the worse for that. They've picked a sensible specification of hardware. They've pushed almost to the high end with GTX 970M, obviously could be GTX 980M, but the balance works well because the hardware, when it's heavily loaded, and let's go to my temperature figures here, the CPU idles at 44 degrees, the GPU at 39 degrees. When it's heavily loaded, and I'm talking running Prime 95 and Firmark type of heavily loaded, not gaming, absolutely beyond silly, the CPU goes to 78 and the GPU to 60, which those Maxwell graphics are just remarkable. 60 degrees, and that's being abused mercilessly. And yet the heat is coming out of those two corners. The underside of the laptop was absolutely cool to the touch. I like the way they've done this sort of 4 feet thing. So when it's sat on a proper surface, you've got airflow and it's all well thought out. But if you are actually using it as a laptop, and I know it sounds like a funny idea in this day and age, you can do it and you won't get any issues with the heat, which is totally pleasing. The other thing is pricing. This has an SRP of £1,350, which is obviously it's a lot of money by any standards, but it's not the sort of premium we're used to seeing for Republic of Gamers. If it had been $14.99, I'd be going, ouch, that's a lot of money for something that's not wowzer. It's got every last feature under the sun. Particularly GTX 980 and possibly, a larger SSD would be the thing I'd actually be looking for. But $13.49, it's currently discounted on overclockers to a penny under £1,200, and that's very good value for money indeed. It's a lot of money, but it's a very fair price. The one niggle I have with the laptop, apart from the fact that the battery is inside the chassis, so to get to it's a pain in the neck, is the SSD. The 128GB SSD, to my mind, it's annoying because it means that once you've installed Windows and a few bits and pieces, you're pretty much obliged to install your software and your games to the hard drive rather than the SSD. That's not a big deal, it really isn't. But I actually managed to fill the SSD with a few bits of testing software and a couple of games, and I can't remember the last time I did that. So it really struck me, 128GB, it's like, oh yeah, that's small. It's 240GB, 256GB would have made a big difference. The other thing I actually quite liked, and I made a particular note about it, is that when you fire the laptop up for the first time and bits of software are shouting at you, such as you got McAfee Live Safe Internet Security, which is a perfectly decent suite, but it does kind of give you a few nags, and you put, you know, flash drives in and such like, but then it calms itself down. And you also get a nag from web storage software, which you get a free 16 gigabyte of storage, which is handy for backups of your data, obviously hopeless for backing up all your drive. But what I liked was that there was a pop-up which said you are recommended to register with Asus, and one of the options was no thanks. So I selected that, and I never heard from it ever again. And that really, it's a stupidly small thing. It really pleased me because I'm so used to laptops in particular, but computers in general. They'll come at you and then they'll come back later, because when you said no, you didn't mean no forever. You meant no just for a week or so, and back it comes. With the Asus, once I said no, that was it. It was no. So the big decision you're really faced with if you're considering a laptop of this type is, with Asus, they've given you a 17-inch screen, full HD, and as I say, discounted, it's just under £1,200. The CyberPower FangBook Edge 4K is a 15.6-inch and 4K panel, and that's £1,265. In the great scheme of things, the same price. So the question is, do you want a slightly smaller screen and chassis, and more just picture perfect, sharp as can be, or do you want to go for big and well, hey? And depending on my mood on a particular day, I could go either way, to be absolutely honest with you. I think I might be swayed by the fact that there isn't a 4K movie standard worthy of the name at present. So watching movies, full HD, 4K, there's nothing much to choose, unless you have, of course, you've got something like a GoPro current, what is it, the Hero 4, isn't it? Shoots in 4K. If you're shooting your own movies in 4K, quite clearly a 4K panel is hugely desirable. But for gaming purposes, 4K is, it's a technology that's coming, but it's not here yet really, because these laptops simply don't have the grunt to drive all games at 4K. It takes an awfully powerful computer to do that. So as things stand, full HD rather than 4K is a very sensible decision. And 17-inch doesn't half look good. 15.6-inch, absolutely fine. 17-inch just gives you so much screen real estate. So I like this laptop a lot. The build quality I love. The fact I couldn't bring myself to pull out the keyboard and see what was going on inside, I suppose, speaks more to me than it does anything. But by goodness me, it's a pretty thing, and I would hate to have done it any permanent damage. So I've passed on pulling it completely to pieces. However, photos on KitGuru as per usual.